coming up. Way better than the dad jokes in this house. Or how about dramas? I've got all the big shows from Sky Atlantic. Now they can watch whatever they're in the mood for.
What's your TV got for you tonight? Now TV. 18 plus, month passes auto-renew, terms apply.
ESPN Radio and TuneIn just go hand in hand. Hi, this is Mel Kiper Jr. reminding you that all of your favorite ESPN Radio shows and events are right here on TuneIn. Just search ESPN Radio to begin enjoying it today.
What if you could keep up with cable news even when you're on the go? With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to MSNBC live without any commercial interruptions. All of the news, none of the ads. Listen live on TuneIn Premium today.
These are the top buzzing stories on TuneIn.
This Family Feud contestant shockingly confessed that she married her student.
Hey, Rachel, what do you do?
Hi, I work at a high school, and I married my student. And
no, you was like younger back then. When you met him in the 8th grade.
About
and
19.
Then, about 19, and he was 9.
Woody Harrelson on Zombieland. Double Tap. The film opens tonight.
The first Zombieland was arguably, at least in the top 3 of the funnest movies I ever made. And this one, I think, is probably going to be the funnest because it's an incredible group of people.
Here is a trending moment from last night's episode of The Masked Singer.
So I got cut loose. Pick up your Sunday shoes.
Yes. And that voice, I mean, it was smiling so big, I think you broke my Botox, so.
Those were the top stories that are buzzing on TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks moving higher, close to records amid a spate of mostly positive earnings reports. Morgan Stanley, for example, up by 2%. Netflix advancing by 3%, heading the other direction. IBM lower now by 5.5%. Doubts over whether a Brexit deal can win approval whipsawed the pound. Right now we have got the S&P up 10 at 3,000 even, higher by 0.4%. The Dow up 54 points, a gain there of 0.2%. Nasdaq up 34, that's a gain of 0.4%. 10-year down 230 seconds, yield now 1.74%. Gold up 0.2, $14.92 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.2%, 54 even a barrel. Recapping, stocks higher, S&P up 10, a gain of 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. This is Bloomberg Business Week. I'm Lisa Abramowitz, in for the great Carol Masser and alongside the amazing Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
It's been a slow journey.
All right, Lisa Abramowitz flattery will get you everywhere here in this studio.
I'm trying.
Oh, you're doing a great job. Happy to have Dan North back with us. He is chief economist looking after North America for Euler Hermes, based down in Baltimore, here with us in New York City today. So much going on in the world, Dan, that we want to talk to you about. Let's keep it a little bit local for the moment because the Fed, I know you watch it so closely. We're hearing from speakers here and there. They're going to get together in a couple weeks. We've got some data. Where's their head at this point in terms of where we go from here for Fed policy?
Well, you talked about keeping it local, and I'd have to just say one thing really quickly. The last time I was in here, I was talking about Amazon and consumer prices and the word price transparency. Do you remember this?
Yes, I did.
I couldn't get it out. It took me I tried 3 times, and then you finally rescued me. That was a beautiful moment. I'm very grateful to you for that.
Well, you're welcome.
But to get... I was getting a little sweaty there for a while. but to get to the Fed, I think what you hear from Powell and some of the other speakers is this uncertainty about the global situation, global trade. And so it gets back to that first cut, which was sort of an insurance cut, if you will. I thought the last one was, and I think the next one too, because if this trade situation continues to decay, and my guess is it will, you've got to try and get in front of it now by cutting rates now. So that's what I think they're looking at. Also, lowering inflation expectations. They got to get in front of that too.
Dan, did you hear that Americans feel the best ever about buying stuff?
I did not hear that.
Well,
is that coming from you?
It's coming from me, but it's coming from data. I'm not just making it up. The Bloomberg Consumer Comfort Index showed that American sentiment about the buying climate reached an all-time high last week. And yet you wrote consumers aren't as strong as we think they are. Please square that.
Well, here's the thing. If I don't know what the Bloomberg survey says, but I know what the Consumer Confidence Survey says, and it says, yes, right now we do feel great. So there is a correlation there. But we're looking out in the future, and we really are nervous about that. And when you get that big a divergence there, that's often a sign, it's almost always a sign of an oncoming recession. So yes, and I get this pushback all the time. What are you talking about, recession? Things are great. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Things are great now. Lots of consumer confidence. But if we look out in the future, we're trying to look a little bit ahead. It's not quite so bright there. And it's funny, I give presentations and webinars like this trying to make my case about how it's great now, but all these indicators say recession. I get comments back, you're fake news, you're fake news.
Right. And what do you say back to that? That the data disagree? Or, you've been a pretty good predictor of this stuff in the past, you personally.
I try to just say, very gently, that's what I said. Things are good now. Let's look at the data that I have in front of you. Yes. But let's try and look forward too, and it can't be fake news because it's not news yet. So, it's that's kind of the way I try and put it in a gentle way.
People have been saying that there is a recession that's imminent for a long time, and they've been wrong again and again. And we're actually seeing from the earnings that companies did a little better, at least so far. Very preliminary, but have done better than people expected. So does that make you perhaps rethink your position?
I think the position is maybe not as solid as it was a while ago. I may think about that. But, when we first saw the yield curve invert, and I feel very strongly about that was May, and it takes a year. So we're looking at next May yet. And that's why I'm trying to look ahead, and some of these other indicators give you a long lead time as well. So the fact that earnings were great, which earnings can be manipulated a little bit, is fine this quarter, but we're looking at the first half of next year. So, again, it gets back to the issue of great earnings today. What are we looking at half a year from now?
All right, so take us into the trade war a little bit, and, potential deal maybe coming, still needs to be papered, as they say. It feels like we are at this economic decoupling moment, though, even amid this deal. I think about the NBA. I think about some of the other things that have been playing through. How does that play through to businesses and to the consumer as you start to get at least the outlines of a trade deal?
Right. Well, so far we've seen investment held down by the tariffs because businesses are saying, well, if this keeps going on, I don't really want to invest right now. And the tariffs that we have in place with China have cost the average American family something like $800 a year, let's say, which isn't a lot. It's a lot to some people. But the next tranche is going to be very focused on consumer goods, iPhones, electric appliances, apparel. That's that sort of thing. That's going to really start hitting the consumer then. We had an agreement. A quote agreement last Friday, which I was really surprised at the market reaction. You were talking about Treasury yields, and it was nothing. It was nothing at all. We delayed tariffs we were going to put into place, so nothing happened on that side. And the Chinese said, "Well, we'll buy some soybeans," and suddenly the markets popped and the yields went up.
Right.
And there's a disconnect there for me.
So let's say that you're right, and we are headed toward a recession in the near term. What does it look like?
What do you mean in terms of severity and length? Yeah, I think we have less financial imbalances now than the last time. So I think that we're most likely looking at a less severe recession, probably 2, maybe 3 quarters. But we think it's probably going to be less severe this time around. What does worry me, though, is that overnight funding market. That doesn't feel right. I mean, there are explanations for it. Corporations had to pay taxes, and banks had to buy treasury bonds, so there's a run on cash. Well, ever since that, the Fed has been flooding the markets with cash and has a big plan to to feed more cash in. That is, if we get a credit crunch, that is really, that's what really was part of the very dangerous part of the previous recession. It doesn't feel right to me, even though it's logical. You suddenly have this big turnaround in activity. And you know what else doesn't feel right? All these IPOs that are going wrong.
Yeah. You're just talking about that.
Yeah. When you see all those going wrong, it gives me a feeling that things are toppy, if you will.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just reading a headline that Endeavor formally pulled, which I think was expected. They look like they're going to come back down the line, but not for now, that's for sure. Dan North, Chief Economist, North America for Euler Hermes, based down in Baltimore, here with us in New York City today. Well, coming up, we're going to dig a little deeper into the world of economics. I believe Kathleen Hayes is going to join us from down at the IMF meetings in D.C. We'll look forward to that.
And Yelena Shulyetyeva from Denver from the NABE conference. But it is going to be interesting to see whether an increasingly bearish feeling among consumers takes hold, because that really is the big question mark right now.
All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly alongside Lisa Abramowitz, taking you through a Thursday afternoon. Never a dull moment here at Bloomberg Radio. You're listening to Bloomberg.
Carol Massar, Jason Kelly.
Psst, parents, it's up to half price on all toys at Sainsbury's right now, so you can keep us occupied this half term and even stock up for Christmas. The Sainsbury's up to half price toy sale ends 22nd of October.
Subject to availability at selected Sainsbury's stores, excluding Centrals and Locals, not available online. Valid 16th to 22nd of October.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Find out what you need to do to prepare at gov.uk/Brexit.
You're 169 in the queue.
I proposed on the 169. She got offered the next stop.
Oh, you're my 169th greatest lover.
The number 169 never screamed going places until now. Get the Toyota Aygo X-Play for only £169 deposit, then £169 a month with 0% APR representative. Just go. Aygo.
0% APR representative on new sales of Aygo X-Play over 48 months. £169 per month. Customer deposit of £169 when proposed and approved via Access Toyota by 31st of October 2019. £3,487.50p optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
Can I have chemo at home?
It's only suitable for a couple of types of cancer.
When you search one question about cancer, you end up with millions of results which contradict each other. For clear and uncomplicated information, come to Cancer Research UK. Visit us online or give us a call on 0808 800 40 40. Cancer Research UK. Together, we will beat cancer.
What can you get from Tesco for £1 each this Halloween?
A pumpkin.
More.
A spooky pumpkin cup.
More.
Ghostly balloons. Spine-tingling spider webs. Ghoulish plates and napkins.
More. Yes, it is scary what you can get for just £1 each this Halloween.
Tesco. Every little helps. Available in selected larger stores.
Hey, it's me again, the TV. Since my family gave me Now TV, there's no more endlessly searching for something they want to watch, because now I don't do filler TV, just killer TV. If my family want movies, I've got blockbusters. Football, how about the Premier League? Or how about crime dramas? I've got loads, and they're never going to guess who did it. Now they can watch whatever they're in the mood for.
What's your TV got for you tonight? Now TV. 18 plus month passes auto renew, terms apply.
It's going to be a bit chilly today. And with the worst of winter yet to reach London, you don't want to wake up to a broken boiler. We're with you. So that's why with British Gas Home Care, we've got your boiler covered 365 days a year. We have thousands of engineers on hand to help get your boiler up and running again, and all from just 46p a day. Buy selected home care products online by the 28th of October and get 1 month free. Search British Gas Home Care. Conditions apply. Prices vary by postcode.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters Waters. I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing close to records amid a spate of mostly positive earnings reports. Doubts over whether a Brexit deal can win approval whipsawed the pound. S&P 500 index, though, did retreat from the highs of the day after piercing the 3,000 level. Disappointing results from IBM weighing on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Right now, we've got the Dow up 70 points, up 0.3%. IBM shares, they are down by 5.5%. S&P 500 index now at 3,002, up 12 points, a gain there of 0.4%. NASDAQ up 37, a gain there of 0.5%. The 10-year down 3/30 seconds, yield now 1.75%. As for the global economic backdrop, John Lipsky is a former managing director of the International Monetary Fund. He spoke with Bloomberg Television and Radio this morning in Washington, D.C.
Actually, the situation, the objective situation of the economies isn't so bad, but there is lack of confidence that we understand exactly why things are slowing and what to do about it, and some doubts about whether the tools we've used in the past would be efficacious now, if needed.
Gold is up 0.2%, $14.92 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.2%, $54 a barrel. Juul is suspending the sale of most e-cigarette flavors in the United States, bending the pressure from regulators. It says it will stop selling fruit and dessert flavors pending an FDA review. It will continue selling mint and menthol flavors. Lots of earnings news. Netflix jumping the most in 9 months after its third quarter results. Ease concerns about looming competition from Disney and Apple. Shares of Netflix, they're up now by just about 2.9%. Also reporting this morning, Morgan Stanley became the latest big bank to defy expectations for weak growth. Its shares are advancing by 2.3%. So again, recapping here, a move higher for U.S. equities with the S&P up 12 at 3,002. That is a gain right now of 0.4%. The Dow up 0.3, NASDAQ up 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Lisa Abramowitz, let's do a little Business Week economics. We got the team split between New York and the nation's capital. Yelena Shalecheva is here with us. She's senior U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics. And just down the Acela corridor is Kathleen Hayes, global economics and policy editor for Bloomberg. She's on the phone from the IMF fall meeting in Washington, D.C. So, KH, I want to start with you. What's the mood down there?
Oh, boy. I don't think the mood is quite as pessimistic as Ray Dalio, Bridgewater chief, talking today about a global sag, not quite as bad as the 1930s, but a lot of debt buildup. I think a lot of people are seeing an economy that is under pressure globally. They're seeing a lot of this due to the trade war, and even the IMF today, now this week, when they downgraded their outlook again for the fifth time they've made it, lowest since 2009, said it's not a recession forecast, and everyone's putting a lot of weight on how trade is averted, et cetera. Also, I think it's interesting that one of the big speakers here was talking about the big problems that people are in denial about. That's Mr. Tharman from Singapore, Tharman Shanmugaratnam, and he is a fixture at all these events, debt buildup, climate change. But I think for investors right now, the question isn't so much, yes, those are really important and they have to be dealt with, but right now people are just wondering, is there enough strength and momentum in enough economies around the world to keep things moving ahead? And can anybody convince the two sides to settle the trade war? But I don't think the mood I'm picking up is as pessimistic as some of the stories we're seeing.
Well, and Yelena, that brings me to the actual data that we've been getting, right, including earnings, which have actually, in many cases, been surprising to the upside. Has this sort of bearishness kind of gotten overshot?
Interesting. I can repeat the same exact thing as Kathleen said.
not as pessimistic. So we did get a lot of data this morning. There was some softening, so you can see it in the data, and it definitely confirms slowing in economic growth into the second half of the year. But it's not something that would raise concerns about a downturn. Okay, so we did see, for example, industrial production softening, but a lot of it is related to the GM strike. So that's a one-off factor that we can kind of like dismiss for now. But in other data, if you look at regional manufacturing surveys, they're not that bad. They're positive. Weak but positive, so that's another thing. And housing seems to be doing okay these days. So housing starts in the single family sector was up for 4 consecutive months.
So, Kathleen, come on back in here because you've got a couple big interviews coming up. You'll be on Daybreak Asia, as always, tonight on Bloomberg Radio and TV. Especially interested to hear from Governor Carstens. What do you make of that?
Yeah. Well, I haven't interviewed him just yet, but I think there's some interesting questions for him, given that, the BIS oversees banks. The BIS meets every 6 weeks with the central bank governors, but from around the world. So I want to hear what he thinks about, the IMF cutting their forecast. And really, and they even said in their outlook, if central banks keep easing, could help, offset this. But is there anything central banks can really do right now? I think that's also important to ask about financial stability. Everyone's saying, oh, yeah, central banks can keep easing, but hey, at some point, don't you worry about the corporate debt buildup, which the IMF itself has pointed out this week. And I'm speaking to Sunny Dominguez from the Philippines. They're one of the countries that's a little bit isolated from the trade war in the Asian region because they're so domestically driven. But Deputy Governor Dodi from the Bank of Indonesia, they've been rate cutters. Are they pleased? Are they enough to pause now? Did they have to keep going? So, that's one nice thing about being here this year. There's no shortage of very exciting topics to discuss.
Yelena, before we let you go, I have to turn to the consumer because I've been harping on this all day. The Bloomberg Consumer Comfort Survey indicated that it was an incredible
true. She has
time.
Been. That's true.
I just keep harping on this, but it's the best time ever, evidently, to shop, and that's how Americans feel right now. Did you see that story?
Great. It's just about time, for the holiday season,
right.
You can start kind of thinking about...
Oh, my God. Let's go shopping.
I think yes. So I think the consumers are feeling okay right now, and it looks like it's not only that survey; it's other surveys as well. Michigan, the conference board, was a decline, but still at very high levels. So consumer confidence is there for the consumers to continue spending. A question is whether the labor market will continue to support that. So if we see a considerable slowdown in hiring momentum, that's not going to be helpful. So that's the thing to watch in with respect to consumer health. So I would like to highlight something, and Kathleen will probably be watching that as well. Tomorrow we are going to hear from Vice Chair Richard Clarida, and that's going to be the last speech before the FOMC meeting at the end of the month. So that could be very consequential if the Fed decides to signal anything with respect to what we should expect from the meeting, because the market seems to be pricing in the rate cut. We also forecast a rate cut at this meeting, but the consensus of economists seems to be split between cut and no cut.
All right. Last word to you, Kathleen. What's the one thing in 30 seconds or less that you're most looking forward to as you wrap up IMF tomorrow?
Ooh. Well, I'm such a nerd. I'll be speaking to a top IMF Asian economists. They'll be giving their outlooks. China in particular, if they've slowed down, can they do more stimulus? Second biggest economy in the world. Let's see what they have to say.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Kathleen Hayes, Global Economics and Policy Editor for Bloomberg. She joined us on the phone from the IMF meeting, down in the nation's capital. And Yelena Shalecheva, our thanks to her as well, Senior U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics. She was here with us in New York City. Well, coming up, we're going to get into the options trade. It involves Reddit. It involves some kind kind of skeezy sort of corners of the internet, I think it's safe to say I'm looking forward to this story.
And it made a lot of money.
A lot of money.
I mean, that's, I think, the important thing.
That's
This is
the
basically
punchline?
the lotto ticket of Reddit.
All right, we're going to get into that in just a few minutes. First, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got your world national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, declaring that it took unconventional leadership to arrive at a successful outcome, President Trump is hailing Turkey's agreement to a ceasefire, halting its incursion into northern Syria. The deal appears to secure Turkey most of its military objectives and forces America's one-time allies in the fight against ISIS to cede a vast section of territory. Still, Trump insisted today the Kurds are happy with the deal because, as he put it, it will save millions of lives.
This outcome is something they've been trying to get for 10 years, everybody, and they couldn't get it. Other administrations, and they never would have been able to get it unless you went somewhat unconventional. I guess I'm an unconventional person.
Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo traveled to Ankara to secure the deal, negotiating for some 5 hours with Turkish President Erdogan. The ceasefire means no more U.S. sanctions will be imposed, and President Trump says those sanctions he already slapped on Turkey will be removed if the ceasefire becomes permanent. Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Brexit deal today with the European Union was barely agreed to before it ran into trouble at home as his Northern Irish allies in Parliament said they could not support it. Johnson will spend tomorrow trying to wrangle the votes he needs before a vote in the UK Parliament on Saturday. President Trump's campaign spokesperson, Tim Murtaugh, is expressing sadness about the death of Representative Elijah Cummings. Trump and the chairman of the powerful House Oversight and Reform Committee had a rocky relationship at best. Trump called Cummings' district in Baltimore a rodent-infested mess. Murtaugh now says it's time to put differences aside. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. I'm Bob Moon.
Europe, it's going through some remarkable financial and political changes.
They've had constructive talks overnight.
We know because we report on them.
You've been conducting this peer review of UK building societies.
Historically, the Fed rate cut cycles between pre-Euro, post-Euro.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
You want this to pose the question with three options.
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey, because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast.
How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team?
Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm back. I just set a personal best on my park run. Feels great.
That's lovely, Mike. I think you've earned the right to put all the bins out.
Hey?
With Vitality Life Insurance, you get properly rewarded when you're active. In fact, you could save over £730 every year in discounts and rewards from our partners. Join over 1 million customers. Just search Vitality Life. Vitality. Positively different. Annual savings available with certain plans and are dependent on members' usage of rewards available. Terms and conditions apply.
How do I love thee? Let me say. You help me work, rest and play. Smart, stylish, chic and clever. I want to share our battery life together.
Your phone. At Tesco Mobile, you can lower your monthly bill with your Tesco Club Card vouchers worth double.
so you can find the one you truly love. Visit us in-store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Lower monthly prices by applying vouchers to initial upfront payment or monthly bills. Purchase required, subject to status, T's and C's apply.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
Deep left center field. A grand slam!
October baseball is here, and TuneIn Premium is your ticket to the 2019 MLB postseason. Featuring the home and away feeds for every game, TuneIn Premium delivers every call of the ALCS, NLCS, and the 2019 World Series through the voices of the local radio broadcast
In
teams.
the air, left field and deep. He's at the wall!
Now until a new champion is crowned, hear every play of the 2019 MLB postseason live on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today. College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
To the 10, all the way to the checkerboard. Somebody stays on his feet and scores.
What's happening in college football this week? This Saturday, undefeated Penn State will have the whiteout in full effect as they host Harbaugh and the Wolverines. Michigan at Penn State at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
These are the top buzzing stories on TuneIn.
Michelle Pfeiffer gives advice to the new Catwoman, Zoe Kravitz.
Make sure, whilst designing the costume, they consider how you're going to go to the bathroom.
Okay.
Tyler Perry on whether or not he's going to make another Medea movie.
I did the farewell tour, the last tour that I did, just to say thank you to all the fans. It was amazing. It was sold out all over the country. It's been a great run, and if she has something to say, who knows? She'll show up.
This Wheel of Fortune contestant mocks his rotten family.
Blair Davis, talk about your family. I've been trapped in a loveless marriage for the last 12 years to an old battle axe named Kim. She cursed my life with 3 stepchildren, and I have 1 rotten grandson. Yay! Those were the top stories that are buzzing on TuneIn.
Next time you look up at the stars, think about this.
Inside you are the remains of a stellar explosion. You are made of stardust. And without the stars, there wouldn't be us.
I'm Guy Raj, the wonders of the universe and the people who still look up every night. Next time on the TED Radio Hour from NPR. You can subscribe to the TED Radio Hour on TuneIn.
It's headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ are all higher. Let's head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here is Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. Like you said, U.S. stocks climbing right now, with the Dow currently up 60 points. S&P's gained 12, while the NASDAQ rises by 35. The U.S. 10 yield at 1.75%. Gold is up 2. Small caps rise 10 points, and 10 of the main 11 S&P sectors are also in the green, led by gains in healthcare and real estate. Only technology fell. Nasdaq Biotechs jump 1%. Transports rise 91 points. Semis gain 3 points, and the VIX is little changed. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, UNH, Walgreens, and Caterpillar, while IBM 5.6% after earnings and led to the downside. Also after earnings, Morgan Stanley rose 2%. Netflix climbed 3%, while Textron fell 5%. In other news, Pence announced the U.S. and Turkey have agreed on a ceasefire in Syria, and wrapping things up, E-Trade reports after the bell. Live from the first breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Thanks, Bill. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
We're going to be talking about, you guessed it, money. I'm making lots of it. A guy on Reddit turning $766 into $107,758 with just 2 options trades. And he credits Reddit for it. Joining us is the author of the story on Bloomberg News, Brandon Koch-Koden. Brandon, can you just give us a sense of what happened that allowed this guy to make such an amazing return?
Yeah, I mean, the basics are short-dated, out-of-the-money options and taking a punt on them. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, so...
Over what time period?
Yeah, I mean, so it was like 2 days, basically, for these Roku ones. And then he flipped it again and took his winnings and wanted to gamble. And he did it again on SPY options a couple days later.
All right, so... break it down for us. For those not as familiar with the intricacies of this, how did he get the info, and then what exactly did he do? Walk us through it.
Yeah, so the Roku options are a very popular play on this Reddit forum, and if you go on there, you'll see people talking about them fairly often.
This is called Wall Street Bets.
Wall Street Bets on Reddit, and that's not surprising, right? Roku's been a pretty volatile stock lately, but it's also had this huge run up this year. So someone like Eddie was looking at it, and he was like, hey, this might not keep going. Why not take a chance? And he flat out said, I was willing to lose this money.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing about this story is it kind of is less about the actual lottery ticket of a trade, which is essentially what it is, and more about the culture of this subgroup on Reddit, which is not tiny, 600,000 people. Can you give us a sense of what it's like?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of people. So what I was trying to get across is like, look, you do have this sort of, to be, I guess, generous locker room sort of humor. You have all these things I say. I mean, there's misogyny, there's racist comments. I mean, but, if you read it, some of it's obviously meant as sarcastic, and people will say you're a pearl clutcher for bringing these things and that you're not reading it with the intent that it is. So, I mean, there's some of that caveat emptor here in writing it. And that's
full disclosure, Brandon is not wearing pearls, nor is he clutching them, but right. Carry on.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's part of the culture, is this joking thing. But what I was really hoping to get across is there are some people on here that know what they're talking about. Now, granted, Eddie's trade is, like we said, it's a lottery ticket. And he's the first person to admit, there's a lot of luck involved here. But there are people on there that if you're willing to wade through and read through a bunch of stuff that's not exactly seemly, there's some very good commentary.
Well, it's also a reminder that, puts and calls can be, I mean, there's risk. As you say, he was willing to lose it all, but they can pay off big time, as they did in this case, especially with a stock that is as volatile. Initially, it was Roku, and then, as you say, he sort of went back in to a different stock, or to Roku again?
He went into the S&P 500 ETF. So I think we've talked about this before. There's that beautiful, huge liquid ecosystem around it, and so you can get cheap options there.
Why Reddit?
I guess, one, I was afraid to go to 4chan. Two, it's a huge community. And I think the one thing I found just kind of looking today is there's a lot of Bloomberg users on there. There's a lot of screenshots from the Bloomberg terminal. I mean, these aren't all guys just sitting in, their houses by themselves.
Yeah, these aren't day traders in pajamas necessarily.
They're absolutely not all day traders. A lot of these people have a Bloomberg terminal in front of them.
And so, it is interesting. The why Reddit question, I feel like is really good because what's that?
Good. I'm glad that
you're welcome. I like all your questions. Most of your questions.
All right. I'm going to get flogged in the break. Carry on. What's going on?
But I mean, it is interesting because there's a great book about Reddit that's been out. We've had the author on a couple of times, and I mean, it just talks about the culture, the sort of unbridled, and that obviously comes in many forms, as you've said, Brandon, but it is this sea of information, sea of opinions, some of which are good, some of which are sort of well thought out, some of which are not. But for those willing to kind of sift through it all, as this guy was, maybe there's something there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what Eddie says, is he uses it for developing his watch list, which I think makes total sense, right? We see this with big data companies that sell their data off to hedge funds when they're scraping Twitter. I mean, one thing you can definitely see here is sentiment. So if you're trading options, that's a great way to go. I mean,
Right.
you can look there and you can see where people are getting ahead of themselves.
Yeah, there are some amazing lines in this. Toss in a smidge of casual racism and a whiff of locker room misogyny. And Wall Street Bets is a window into the back rooms of a seedy stock market casino with no Burry to be found. I'm talking about Michael Burry, of course.
Made famous by The Big Short. Yeah, it's a great read.
I would love to take credit for that line, but that's a Bob Ivory special right there.
It sounds a lot. I can hear Bob Ivory's voice there. It's a terrific piece all the way through. Great piece of reporting and writing. Brandon Kochkoden, check it out. It's one of the most read stories on the Bloomberg. And Lisa, as I was mentioning, the book about Reddit, Christine Lagorio Chafkin is the author. Paperback just came out. It's called We Are the Nerds. She's terrific. It's a really good look at sort of that company, but also the culture underneath Reddit.
And talking about We Are the Nerds, the documentary that I was talking about earlier about fonts is actually called Helvetica. So,
that was a really nice synthesis there. You really sort of brought it all together.
I
all
tried.
right. I'm Jason Kelly alongside Lisa Abramowitz. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week here on a Thursday afternoon. Bloomberg Radio coming up. We're going to get Dave Wilson's stock of the day, his chart of the day, excuse me. Also check in with David Welch. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks are mostly higher in the final hour of trading. The Dow Jones Industrials are up 62 points, or 0.25%. The Nasdaq is up 35 points, more than 0.4%. The S&P 500 is up 12 points, 0.4%. The digital bank Chime isn't chiming. It has been offline for about a day, leaving its more than 5 million customers without access to their money. Chime says it is working to restore its website and mobile app customers' data is not at risk. Overall, industrial production fell 0.4% last month. The Fed says a slump in factory output resulting from the General Motors strike weighed heavily on the production numbers. Total output also includes utilities and mines. A modest increase in the number of homes on the market at the beginning of the year was erased by the home shopping season. New Zillow data show the nation's housing inventory has fallen to the lowest level since at least 2013. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
My name is Hunter Hayes. I know myself, and I know my buzzed warning signs. One shot is about knowing my limits, or not necessarily knowing my limits.
I start with one shot to have a good time.
One of the signs that I'm starting to feel a little buzz is when I start solving not only my own problems, but the entire world's problems. When I know I'm going out, I know I'm going to start with calling for a ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, tune in on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Did you know TuneIn doesn't just live here on your smart speaker? From the audio that moves you to the audio that gets you moving. Soundtrack your every movement with the free TuneIn app. Available on your phone or tablet. Download TuneIn on the App Store today.
Major League Baseball postseason is in full swing, and TuneIn Premium puts you at field level for every...
And it's a home run.
Single...
And goal!
game.
That gone, a home run.
With TuneIn Premium, catch every pitch of every inning of every Major League postseason game until the final out of the World Series.
0-2 pitch, little half swing, and it hit.
At home or on the road, Major League Baseball's postseason action is on TuneIn Premium.
And that ball is gone.
Upgrade today.
In the dictionary, a podcast is this: a digital audio file made available on the internet, typically as a series of which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast is this.
I'm Rachel Martin with David Green, and this is Up First from NPR News.
And it's defined like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
From news, sports, to pop culture, comedy, and beyond, define your own podcast possibilities on TuneIn.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
To the 10, all the way to the checkerboard. Somebody stays on his feet and scores.
What's happening in college football this week? This Saturday, undefeated Penn State will have the whiteout in full effect as they host Harbaugh and the Wolverines. Michigan at Penn State at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
These are the top buzzing stories on TuneIn.
Michelle Pfeiffer gives advice to the new Catwoman, Zoe Kravitz.
Make sure, whilst designing the costume, they consider how you're going to go to the bathroom.
Okay.
Tyler Perry on whether or not he's going to make another Medea movie.
I did the farewell tour, the last tour that I did, just to say thank you to all the fans. It was amazing. It was sold out all over the country. It's been a great run, and if she has something to say, who knows? She'll show up.
This Wheel of Fortune contestant mocks his rotten family.
Blair Davis, talk about your family.
I've been trapped in a loveless marriage for the last 12 years to an old battle axe named Kim. She cursed my life with 3 stepchildren, and I have 1 rotten grandson.
Yay! Those were the top stories that are buzzing on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations,
Live commercial-free news,
and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game.
Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up here on this edition of Bloomberg Business Week, Jason Kelly, Lisa Abramowitz. We're going to hear from Dave Wilson. He's got his chart of the day. Also going to check in on what's happening with GM and the UAW. But first, let's get to Charlie Pellet. He's got an update on the day, the trading day. Hey, Charlie.
Right, well, thank you very much, Jason Kelly. Thank you, Lisa. We have got 28 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell here. Stocks resuming a push toward records amid a spate of mostly positive earnings reports. Doubts over whether a Brexit deal can win approval whipsawed the pound. S&P 500 index spending much of the session, fluctuating right around the 3,000 level. That's where we stand now. 3,001 up 11. That's a gain of 0.4%. We've got the Dow up 65 points, up by 0.2%. NASDAQ up 37, a gain of 0.5%. After earnings, though, IBM, member of the Dow, it is down by 5.3%. Last night we heard from Netflix, shares up today by 3.1%. This morning we heard from Morgan Stanley. It became the latest big bank to defy expectations for weak growth. Shares pushing higher by 2.2%. Mona Mahajan is Director of U.S. Investment at Allianz Global Investors.
A couple things that we liked out of the bank earnings. One, it seems like the consumer is still solid. We talked about earlier, the consumer is key for this economy. And two, it seems like trading and equities businesses are still pretty robust here. And, that's a good sign given the volatility in the markets, but also given some of the IPOs that maybe were not as robust earlier on. So we felt positive about that.
And speaking of IPOs, Saudi Aramco is said to delay its initial public offering launch. Juul suspending the sale of most e-cigarette flavors in the U.S., bending to pressure from regulators. Gold little change now, up $1.39 the ounce to $14.91. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.3%, $54.05 a barrel. Recapping stocks higher, S&P up 11, a gain there of 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. clearly what's going on here, but I can't discern the artist, though. Do you know the artist?
I'm just like Cheap Thrill with healthcare. Really?
Really? It was our producer Paul Brennan's idea, but I heartily endorse it. It's Frank Zappa.
Wow.
That's who it is.
All right.
And I'm happy about that. Because,
Zappa that disease right on out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. Anyway, I got to tell you, it's all about healthcare stocks, hence we're talking disease and all that sort of thing. And it's something that Francois Trahan, who's the head of U.S. equity strategy at UBS, highlighted his latest research. Basically, looking ahead to next year, I mean, you got all this talk about Medicare for all, changing the Affordable Care Act, a.k.a. Obamacare, or putting pressure on drug makers to bring down prescription prices. So there are a lot of balls in the air for the healthcare industry going into next year. So the question is, when you look at the stocks, is that already reflected in prices? And Trahan's basic view is that some or not, if not all, of the policy risk is priced in. That's a quote from his research. Mm-hmm. And the way that you can kind of look at it, as he did, is just to compare price earnings ratios based on projected profit, what you call forward PEs, for the S&P 500 healthcare index and for the S&P 500 itself. And when you run the numbers, if you go back to the beginning of this year, the healthcare stocks were actually more expensive by about 3%. Well, now you're talking about a discount of as much as 15% on the group. So you're getting close to the lows that you saw in late 2016, also back in 2011. So at least it gives you a frame of reference, to suggest that, the concern is out there. We've seen this movie before. And at least there's the potential for a recovery in Trahan's views, because he's recommending that investors go for the healthcare stocks at this point. If you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Dave Wilson, thank you so much. We'll see you in just a little bit for your stock of the day. Let's turn now to another David, Mr. David Welch. He is our Detroit bureau chief. He joins us on the phone from the Motor City, bringing us the latest on what's going on with GM and the UAW. David, take it away. What do we need to know?
So they are discussing, they being the Council of UAW local chairmen and presidents from around the country, discussing the tentative agreement. We're hoping we'll get a vote from them soon. In this Byzantine political structure, they have this council, and there are about 200 of them, will vote whether to take it to a vote. So then the members would vote to ratify it all across the country. And if we get there, then they would finally have a deal. Basically, what this deal does, if it's ratified, it exchanges some really good pay and bonuses for the existing workers. But 3 of the 4 plants that GM originally said they were going to close will go down with no new product or anything like that. So what GM gets out of this is